right. Well, it's 11 o'clock, so it's time to get going. So let me just make sure I got everything up. We got people on. Things are looking good. So we are going to go ahead and start presenting here. So my name's Mike Pinocchi, owner of Network Protocol Specialists. And the screen behind me, while we were getting ready there, I was trying to readjust that. And of all the things to kind of go haywire here, I can't readjust that. So we're just gonna have to live with that the way it is. Okay, so we are going to be covering the Etherscope NXG, and I'm kind of excited to be able to say that because for the last few months I've had to be very careful not to say Etherscope NXG. Now I can. In fact, I can even come over here and I can show you that Etherscope NXG. So we are going to be going through this piece of equipment, taking a look at what we can do with it, some of the different features, how it's differentiated from some of the other products out there, etc. So on the webcast here, I also have Vincent Choi. Vincent is the product manager for the Etherscope NXG. So this is a live webcast, and I want to make sure that we take advantage of the fact that it is a live webcast and that you ask questions, because we are here to make sure that those questions get answered. I'm going to be going through the different features of this. In fact, we've got a couple of Etherscope NXGs online here, and I'll be doing a number of live demos. So let me just share my screen here real quick, and we'll say share. There are the Etherscopes, and we're just going to swing over here real quick. So this is the NetAlly Etherscope NXG presentation. My name's Mike Pinocchi with Network Protocol Specialists. Just real quick about me and why am I doing this. I'm owner of Network Protocol Specialists. I've been troubleshooting networks professionally for since about 1996. I've been delivering training on the Fluke, NetScout, and NetAlly products for the last 20 years. In fact, back behind me here, we've got a few of the products that we've done training on. In fact, we even have the original Etherscope back here. So my email address is mike@nps-llc.com. If you have any questions about network troubleshooting, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email and I'll get that to you. So today, we're going to be talking about the Etherscope NXG, and this is a new product that was announced by NetAlly on October 1st, 2019. So just last week, this was announced. We're going to see that it's an Android-based product, and this is one of the really cool features of the Etherscope NXG, is that not only can we use this to go out and test our network, but we can do a whole variety of other things. I've got all kinds of cool things connected. I've got a Epson label printer connected. I've got a keyboard. I've got a barcode scanner. So we're going to go through and take a look at some of those. It's both a wired and wireless analyzer. We're going to find that this has 4 different network interfaces in it. It's got 2 wired interfaces and 2 wireless interfaces. It supports 802.11x. So we can go all the way up to Wi-Fi 6. So we're going to take a look at what we can do with it, some of the unique features, and where this fits in with doing network troubleshooting. And so as we go along, I'm going to get really excited. I'm going to start talking fast, and I might miss a thing or two. So that's one of the reasons that Vincent's on, is to make sure that he sends me chat messages so that he lets me know, hey, don't forget about this, or be sure to mention that kind of thing. The other thing that we're going to show on here is the integration with Link Live. And this is one of the really important features. And we're going to go in and take a look at Link Live. And Link Live allows us to go in and take the information that's been collected by the Etherscope NXG and break that up to the cloud, and then we can go in and generate reports on that. So this is really where we can take what we've collected, what we've discovered with this piece of equipment, and start doing reporting. We can put it out to a CSV file so that we can bring it into spreadsheets, do all kinds of neat things with that. So if you're afraid that I am going to just kill you with PowerPoint presentations, I'm not, because that is the extent of the PowerPoint presentation right there. So with that said, let's flip on back here. And here is the Etherscope NXG. And I've got 2 of them running right here. And we'll we'll see why we have two of them running. We're going to be doing some throughput testing, some performance testing. We're going to use one as a target, and we're going to use the other one for doing the throughput testing. So we're going to get into that. Let me switch over to the old GoPro right here. And we're going to take a quick look at the physical Etherscope NXG. And again, Q&A window. We've got our, let me stop that share right there. So we've got our Q&A window. We've got our chat window. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to shoot those in. So here is the Etherscope NXG. And if we come in and we take a look at the top of this, we've got an SFP cage right here. And this SFP cage supports both gig and 10 gig SFPs. So right now, I've got a 1 gig SFP plugged in there. We are going to be doing some throughput testing. We're going to do the 10 gig over here on the copper port. But here we have our copper port. So not only does this support, our regular 10, 100, 1000, but this port supports 2.5, 5, and 10 gig. And in fact, we have this particular piece of equipment, our Etherscope right here, plugged into a multi-gig switch. So we could go in and we could force this to 2.5 gigabits per second. We could force our target to 2.5, and this is the way we could go in and test some of our multi-gig connections. We've got a USB 3 port up here on the top. We've got an antenna connection right there. If we flip this over, here's where we have our management port. And so what I'm going to be doing is those VNC sessions that you see I've got set up right there, I'm using the wired management port right now to connect to those. Now, we could use the wireless management port as well. We'll talk about those. We've got our USB-C connection right here that we're using for a charge port. Now, one of the neat things, if I've got this plugged into PoE, I can use PoE to charge it as well. I've got a micro SD slot right there. So one of the things that I've found that's been really nice with like the LinkRunner G2 is that I can come in and I can put network documentation on here. I can put PDF files. I can put videos on there. So this little micro SD card is a great way to go in and transfer data back and forth between our PC and our Etherscope NXG. Over here on the other side, I've got a couple of volume buttons right there. I can use that to change the volume if I'm watching a video, if I'm doing something that has audio on it. And on the back, I've got a camera and I've got a flashlight. So if nothing else, I could go in and I could use this to light stuff up, right? So that is the physical box that we have there for our Etherscope NXG. And the neat thing is this is highly portable. So battery powered, we've got Android running on there. I can grab this, pick it up, take it out, and start using it to go out and do network troubleshooting. So physically, that's what we have. And the nice thing is, whether I'm trying to go in and plug into an older network or I'm trying to go in and test 10 gig, I have an interface on there I can use to connect to, as well as those wireless interfaces. So let's go back and I'm going to start sharing my desktop. And let's get right into it and start taking a look at what we can do with the Etherscope NXG. And what we see is right here on our front screen, I've got a number of tests. I've got auto test, I've got ping TCP, I've got packet capture, which we're going to do. I've got discovery, Wi-Fi, path analysis. I've got the performance test, iPerf. We've got Link Live. We're going to see that we can use this as a way to integrate with Link Live, and this is also where we can go in and download software updates. Okay. We've got our App Store in here. We've got our cable test. And so one of the things that we can do with this is, in addition to being able to collect this other information, one thing I want to mention about the hardware buttons is if I push the volume down and the power button at the same time, I can take a screenshot. And this is really handy because let's say that I went in and I did a test and I wasn't getting gigabit, but the switch was advertising that it could do gig. This could be an indication that I have a problem with my cabling. And you'll notice that we've got cable test on there. And again, we may not get time to get to all of this stuff. But one of the things that's kind of neat that comes with this is we've got these little wire map adapters. And so with these wire map adapters, I could go in, see they're brand new, I haven't even opened these. With this little adapter, let's switch over here, I can plug this adapter into the other end of the cable. I've got a number 1 on there. So I could use this to do a wire map. Well, let's say that wire map comes back and the wire map tells me that pin 7 was broken. And I want to capture that. Well, by being able to go in and do a screenshot and then save that screenshot to Link Live, we're going to see that I can tie that screen image, that picture, together with the Link Live test result. So I can say we failed our link speed test, and this is why, because that pin is broken. Okay. Now, we can come up, we've got our icons up at the top. Just to show you, we're scanning through our channels. So this is actively going out and taking a look at what's going on with wireless. We are going to touch on one of the features in here that's really cool, and that is called breaking the layer 2 ceiling. And we're going to look at how we can go in and assign names, IP addresses, things like that to wireless devices without the need to connect to the wireless network. And it is really a cool way to go. And we'll get to that, but we've got our wireless scanning back there. We're connected via VNC. In fact, if we drag this down from the top, I'll just do that with my finger, it's going to give me all kinds of information about what's going on in here. I'm scanning my channels. I've got multiple management port connections. I've got my wired port connected up, and it shows the IP address of that. It says we've got VNC connected, which we do right here. And we can do things. We can turn the flashlight off and on, auto rotate, etc. So we'll drag that back up again. So let's jump straight into auto test. And this is really where we typically start when we're using the Etherscope NXG. So let's say I go in and I want to make sure I've got a good connection out there to the network. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the cable that I have on the top of my Etherscope right now. We're going to plug into a different cable. And I'm going to tap on my auto test. Now in this case, I created this little auto test, and we're going to go through and create a couple of them. But I created this one just as a really basic. In fact, let's just start by creating one here. Okay. So we're going to go back here, and we're going to say I want to add a good old live demos. We're going to come in. Let me uncheck these, and we're going to talk about the importance of these different profiles in just a minute. But I'm going to add a profile right here. When I go in and add these auto test profiles, I have the ability to go in and add a wired profile, a wireless profile, or an air quality profile. We're going to start by adding a wired profile. So in this case, I'm going to go in and give it some basic information. So I'm going to come up here, give it a name, and I'm going to say webcast demo. So this is our webcast demo profile that we're going to start with. And you know what? I'm going to leave it just like that. So I'm going to come back here, and we're going to come back a little bit. And there's our webcast demo auto test. And I'm going to hit start on that. So when I go in and hit start on it, it will begin by going in and establishing a link on that port. It's going to tell me that the switch at the other end is advertising 10100 gig and that we connected at gig. And we like that because we connected at the highest speed. And I can expand each one of these. So it's going to tell me my advertised speed, what speed I was able to connect at. It tells me that I'm connected to demo kit switch 1. So this is using CDP and or LLDP to go in and determine which switch and port we're connected to. So right here it told me that I learned that I was connected to port 5 via LLDP, and I'm connected to this switch, and that switch has this IP address. I can't tell you how many times I've gone in to do network troubleshooting where I've said, where are we plugged in? And nobody has any idea where we're plugged in. So by being able to come in here and use CDP and LLDP to very quickly determine where I'm connected saves hundreds of hours. And one of the things that you'll notice as I'm going through here is I'm using a lot of these thin Ethernet cables. And I'll tell you what, with the thick Ethernet cables, in a lot of cases, it was hard enough to figure out where everything was connected. Now with the thin cables, it makes it that much harder, so we put that much more cable in there. So in this case, I could come in and see which switch I'm connected to. So we're gonna go back. I got a DHCP address. So in this case, it tells me, hey, I got a DHCP, here's what was offered, here's what I accepted. My DHCP server, was there a relay agent involved? We can scroll up, gives me an idea of how long that DHCP process took. In addition, we could come in and we could look for secondary DHCP offers. So if somebody brought a rogue DHCP server in, it's going to show up in here because I'm going to see that I got 2 offers. So in most cases, if I need to have DHCP on my network, being able to come in and very quickly tell who offered it, did I get it, and did I get a secondary offer, very important. We go in, we resolve a quick DNS entry here. So I went in, looked up google.com. We came back, we said, DNS1 gave us that information. Here's the 2 DNS servers, shows that we were successful on both of those. And in this case, I got to my default router. So from a very basic standpoint, I'm able to go in and say, I can get to my default router, I'm connected to this switch and this port, and I got a DHCP address. So that would be a very basic test that we could do. So the neat thing is we can go way beyond basic. So I could come up here and I could go to my configuration, my little gear up there in the upper corner, and say, you know what, I expect PoE. PoE's become a very important part of our networks today. So I could come in and say, you know what, we're going to turn on PoE, and we're going to turn on our device class. So in this case, I can come in and specify which class of service I'm expecting for the device at the other end, all the way up to class 8. So if I have UPoE, I can specify that. And this is one I really like because I use a lot of MikroTik equipment, and MikroTik tends to use power injectors. I can also say I'm looking for a power injector. So it's just going to measure the voltage on that port. So I could come in and I could say, you know what, for this switch, I expect class 3. So I'll hit OK. And the other feature in here is true power. Now what true power does is it actually draws the amount of current that we're expecting. So in this case, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to enable true power. So not only do I want to make sure that I'm getting the right voltage, but I want to make sure that I can draw that full current for that particular connection. So we're going to come back. We will get into some other tests real quick, but if I go into my wired connection, this supports 802.1q VLAN tags. So this means if I'm connected to a VLAN trunk, I could go in and check and make sure those work. In fact, I've already set up some profiles. I won't drag you through the whole process of setting that up, where we're going to test a number of VLANs in there. So we're going to come back. I can use DHCP or static addresses. So let's come down here. What we're going to do is we're going to go to test targets. And here is where I can go in and specify targets that I want to make sure are available. So I could say, you know what, I want to be able to get to NetAlly, I want to get to Google, I want to get to Salesforce, I want to do a TCP connectivity test to Google, I want to make sure that I can get to my backup network attached storage and my primary network attached storage. Now here's the big thing, when you start working with this, these profiles go across all of our different tests. These test targets go across all of our different test profiles. So once I create it, I can go in and just click it or unclick it and quickly add it. So once I build this library of test targets, let me just show you real quick here. My test targets, this can be a ping, this could be a TCP connect, this could be an HTTP test, or this could be an FTP test. So once I build that library of test targets, all I have to do is click them and it will add them to that test profile. So let's go back. Now we're going to run that test profile one more time. Okay. So it's going to go in, it's going to test to make sure that we're getting the PoE that we expect. So in this case, we got 47.33 volts. Okay, now, if we were to come in and take a look at that, we requested class 3 and we got class 3. Our true power right here, we got 12.998 watts. It says that our unloaded voltage was 47.33 and our loaded voltage was 46. This is a good indicator. If I see that when I don't have a load on there, it's good, but I do see that voltage go way down when I put a load on it, that could be an indicator that I have some problems with my cabling, I have some high resistance, etc. So in that case, I passed my POE. And in fact, we came through, we ran our tests, everything came back and told me that we were able to connect everything. So I know that I can get to all the resources I need to get to. Okay, that's all cool. But you know what? If we go back one more step, let me show you this. There's our webcast demo. We can build a profile that tests a connection and it tests connectivity to certain devices. The really cool thing is we can start grouping these profiles together into profile groups. So in that case, I could come in and I could say, I want to add this. I want to add a Wi-Fi profile. So in this case, I'm going to say that I want to connect to my guest network. So we'll say guestnet. And we're going to select an SSID in here. So I'm going to click on SSID. It's going to show me the different SSIDs that we see. So I'm going to say I want to connect to guest 5. So guest 5 gigahertz guest network right there. Encryption none. We got that wide open. And I could choose a specific BSSID, a specific access point if I wanted to. I'm not going to do that. And in this case, we're going to come down to test targets, and we're going to test a couple test targets out on the internet here. We'll choose these 3. I'm going to go back. So now I've added that guest network as well. And I'm going to add one more in here, and that's an air quality profile. So for the air quality profile, what this is going to do, we'll say webcast demo. This is going to go out and take a look at the health of my wireless network as far as 802.11 utilization and non-802.11 utilization. So if I have any interference sources out there. So now I'm going to add these 3 out there. Now when I hit start, what it's going to do is it's going to run each one of these profiles in sequence. And it's going to show me what the test results are of each of those. So now, if I go into a location and I have multiple VLANs I want to test, if I have multiple wireless networks I want to test, I don't have to change my configuration between each one of those. I can come in and I can run that profile group and it will run all of these tests and it's going to show me what the results of those are. And if we go back and we take a look at Link Live, what it's doing is it's uploading these test results. I'm getting emails showing up on my screen right now. It's uploading these test results as these profiles are running. So in this case, we're going to connect to our guest network. We got that green. I love the green. The green tells me that I was able to successfully connect out there. And we see, here's our webcast demo. Let's see if that comes up. Oh, we got a yellow. Let's see what happened there. So we come in and we're going to see what's going on. And we see that right there on channel 38, we've got some high utilization on that. We've got some high non-802.11. Now what's happening is the PC that I've got, the Mac I've got set up for doing this webcast is using an 80 megahertz wide channel. So we're picking up some of that utilization on those channels that are part of that 80 megahertz wide channel in there. But it's saying that, we're up in here to 34%. It tells us what's going on, how many APs we have out there. So we could start drilling in and getting a better idea of what's going on with that. But in this case, it came back, showed us what our results are. Now, if I really like that profile, I can come up here and I've got this little save icon right there. And I could say, I want to save that as, we'll call that webcast demo. So if you're going from client to client, if you're going between multiple locations, multiple buildings, multiple applications, things like that, we can create a profile for each one of those. In fact, let's flop over here to the GoPro. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug my copper connection here. I'm going to grab my fiber connection. We're going to plug our fiber connection in, and this is plugged into a 1 gig trunk port. So if I come up here and I click on my little save icon and I say load, and I'm going to load the NPS trunk VLAN 10 and 14, and I'll hit load. So this is one that I previously created. It shows it's going to be using these two profiles right here. So we'll come back. I'm going to hit start. Now in this case, that fiber connection right there has a couple of trunk ports. It's a trunk, and it's got VLANs 10 and it's got VLAN 14 on it. So let's say I'm going in and putting in a new network, and I want to make sure that that network is working properly. Before I plug the switch into the end of that connection, all I have to do is go in and set a profile up like this, and it tests connectivity on each one of my VLANs. That way I know that that particular trunk has been configured properly for those VLANs. And this could be a trunk that's going between switches, could be a trunk that's going to a server, could be a trunk that is going to a VoIP phone where we have a PC connected on the other side of it. So by being able to go in and do that, it gives us a quick way to test it. There are our test results. That worked. And in fact, let me grab that email right there and just show you what happens. Every time I have been going in and running this test, I get a message coming up like this. And in this case, I have my Etherscope set up in Link Live to send me an email. So now it sends me an email and it says, hey, this is the test time that we did. Here's the device. Here's the connection. Were we able to connect? What switch were we connected to? What DHCP address we got? All of that. Now, what's really neat is if I came in and I said reply, and I said studio test, I hit send. So I'm going to send that. I'm going to reply to that email. Now we're going to go over and take a look at Link Live here in just a minute. We're going to see is it's going to attach a tag to that test result showing me that comment that I just put in there. Not only can I attach comments, but I can attach pictures as well. All right. So let's come back here and let's see. Let's just take a look here. I know you've got to have some questions out there, so don't hesitate to ask questions. I'm going to jump down here to discovery. So with our auto test, actually, we're going to do this. We're going to come up, and our auto test can also be a way to determine which network we're connecting to. So I just need to make sure I got the right network here. So I'm going to plug that in. And we are going to switch over here. I'm going to say load. And yeah, we'll say webcast demo. We're going to load that. And in this case, I'm going to turn off my guest network. What I'm doing with this is I'm connecting to the network, and I'm using my auto test as a way to connect to the network and get an IP address on my network test port. So we're going to go ahead and let this run real quick. And what this does is this allows me to connect to the network, get an IP address, get my DNS, DHCP information. And if we come back, we're going to see kind of an interesting little thing on here. And that is when that finishes, we're going to see a little link. That little link tells me this profile right here is the one that I'm using to link to the network. So now I have an IP address. So let's come up here. We're going to go to discovery. Now, when I sent out the invitation for this webcast, one of the things that I said is, if you have any questions, shoot me an email. So one gentleman sent me a very long list of questions, and it was fantastic. One of the questions is, hey, look, with previous tools, I could do a discovery, but I was limited to my broadcast domain. Where with tools like the OptiView, I was able to discover beyond that broadcast domain. Where does the Etherscope fit in with that? Well, here's the cool thing. With the Etherscope, not only can we do a discovery of our local network, but we can specify extended broadcast domains in there as well. In fact, if I come up here and here's my discovery, it's discovered a number of devices out there. If I come up here and go into my discovery settings, we can start by setting the SNMP community strings. The Etherscope NXG supports SNMP versions 1 and 2 and version 3. So if I'm using SNMP version 3, I can specify my credentials in there. In this case, I am not using version 3, but we could come in here and we could add community strings. And I find that there's two things I can benefit from here. And one is I can go in and specify the default community strings and do a discovery, and it will show me which devices on my network have the default community strings on them. I could also come in and add my own string. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say community string, and I'm going to say mic string. Okay, I can put anything I want in there. Now, whenever we do our discovery, here we'll go back, it's going to test each one of these community strings. So I can change the order of these to optimize that. I could put the string I use the most first, and that's going to help speed up my discovery a little bit. But we can come in, and I've set up my SNMP community string. I can select my active discovery ports. So right now, it's going to try discovering, well, not try, it is going to discover on the wired port, the Wi-Fi port, the wired management port, and the Wi-Fi management port. So I can discover on 4 different networks at the same time. So this is a huge advantage for being able to go in and discover on my wireless network at the same time doing discovery on my wired network. So we're going to leave all 4 of those turned on. Here's where our extended discovery ranges come in. Now, one of the keys is that once I do things like create test targets, I create performance services, or I create extended discovery ranges, I don't want to delete them. Because what will happen is any profile that uses those discovery ranges, that uses those test targets, that is, if I delete this, it will delete it across all the profiles. So the idea is once I go out and create these ranges, I don't have to go back in and re-enter them each time. So I'm going to say I want to discover this network, this network, this network, and this network. And you can add as many of these in as you want. You can reorder them. We can come in here, we can duplicate them, we can delete them. But what this does is this allows us to extend our discovery out beyond just our local broadcast domain. So let's come back. And it says refresh discovery to apply changes. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to hit refresh discovery. And I'm going to say clear and rerun discovery. So we're going to let this start discovering again. So what this is doing is this is going out and this is doing a discovery on our network. And it's showing us icons that go in here with each of the devices. It's giving us a name. It's showing us, is it a switch? Is it a router? What type of device that is. It gives us the IP address. It gives us, right here, the MAC address. Gives us a name to go with it. Now, we've got 85 devices so far. We could have thousands of devices that we've discovered out here. So as part of my discovery, what I want to be able to do is start narrowing in on those devices that I really care about. The way I can do that is I can click on my little filter icon right there. When I do that, I can now say, do I want to filter on device type? Do I want to filter on subnet, SSID, IPv4, IPv6, bands, channels? So if I came in and I said, you know what, I'm interested in my switches to start with, I could come in and I could say, show me the switches. So I'll hit back, and now it's showing me those 7 switches out of the 88 devices that I've discovered. Okay. Now, if I click on that again, my filters are additive. So if I collapse device types and I go to IPv4 subnets, I can say, you know what? I'm only interested in the switches on the 10.0.0/24 network. So now I've got those 2 filters up there. So when I come back, I've now filtered down on just those switches in that network. So this gives me a way I can go in and very quickly start narrowing down on those devices. So if I came back and I said, this PoE switch, tell me more about that. Well, if I click on that switch, now I can start drilling down into that switch. And I'm doing this all through VNC right now, but we could also, we could be using the touch screen to do this same thing. So I could say, which interfaces do we have on there? And it shows me the interfaces. And it shows me how many devices I have on each one of those interfaces. So I could say, I've got E8 right here has 6 devices. So I could click on that. It tells me the speed, the duplex. I could go in and say, hey, show me what devices are attached there. And it shows me which devices are connected to that port on the switch. I could just start working my way back out, take myself right back up there. And now if I click on the filters, I could come in here and I could start removing those filters. Now, if we came in and let's see, let's go through and take a look. I'm going to go to this like master switch right here. Now, here's a really cool thing. Because it's used SNMP to go out and get the bridge forwarding table off of all of the switches that we've discovered, it tells me that this master switch right here is connected to this Ethernet switch on gigabit or on fast Ethernet port 21. So no more tugging on cables, no more having to guess where things are. In fact, if we come over here, Uta, that works with me, she's got a managed switch down in her office. So if I say I want to filter just on Uta's network, we're going to come back here. So this shows me all the devices that are down there in Uta's network. And if I said, you know what, I need to help her out with her printer, and here's that brother printer right there. If I click on that printer, it tells me that it's connected to the switch in her office and it's connected to interface gig 4. I don't have to ask her to go trace the cables down. Especially if you have an office where somebody isn't capable or isn't set up to do those types of things. Now I know exactly which interface that printer is connected. It's connected to gig 4. In fact, if I come down here to my tools, I could do a packet capture, I could do a ping, I could browse to it, but here's where my path analysis comes in. And this is really cool because now that we've collected our layer 2 and layer 3 information about our routers and switches, I could come in and say, show me the path that we take to get to that printer. So it's going to trace a path from our Etherscope NXG all the way out there to Uta's printer. So it says that this Etherscope, we go out the wired port, we go into demo kit switch 1, and we come in on port 5, out port 8. We go into classroom switch 1, in port 8, out port 1. We go into my MikroTik router here on port 2. We go to Uta's office. So we go through our VPN tunnel. We come out port 2 of Uta's router. We go into interface 1 of her switch, out interface 4. So now I have taken and traced this path through the network. And if I want to document that, see that upload to link live right there? We'll click on that. And I'll say, path to Uta's printer. Okay. And I'm going to upload that. We're going to save that to link live. So now just save that path. I've documented what that path is through my network at layer 2 and layer 3. So often I go into networks and people aren't sure how things are connected. Being able to do that path analysis is so critical. All right, so let's go back because I know you're thinking, what's that breaking the layer 2 ceiling that you were talking about? So I'm going to come in and I am going to do a filter here. And we're going to filter on, let's do Netgear 77. Okay, so this is one of my office networks. Now, I have not connected to a wireless network. If you notice up in the upper corner, it is scanning through, collecting information. But now we see things like Panaki MBP MacBook Pro. If I click on that, what it has done is it discovered on the wired side. It found the MAC address of my machine. It used MDNS, NetBIOS, whichever name resolution we could use DNS to resolve the name for that IP address that goes with that MAC address. So now over on the wireless side, we discovered and we could see the MAC address. Why? Because the MAC address isn't encrypted. So we did our discovery on the wired side, but we're merging that wired side information with the wireless side. So what that allows us to do is put information in there for wireless devices without ever connecting to the wireless network. So what does that tell us? Tells us here's the name of my machine, here's its IP address, its MAC address. Tells me that I'm on channels 1 and 36. Tells me I'm using 802.11 AC. We see that I am connected to this AP. There is the SSID, and there's the encryption I'm using. So I can come in and take a look at my addresses. I did not have to connect to the wireless network. So if I can discover on the wired side, now I can get all this information about all of my different wireless networks, be able to combine that and put that in there. So this is a very slick feature. Now I could come in, I could do my path analysis, I can connect to that device, etc. So now it is showing me which devices. There's my OnePlus phone. Shows that, you know, my phone's connected, tells me what AP I'm connected to, etc. So not only am I doing my discovery on my wired side, but I'm doing my discovery on my wireless side at the same time. So being able to pull all that information together, I get that really good discovery picture. Now, before we move on from discovery, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say upload to Link Live. So we're going to take all of this discovery information, we're going to upload that. Call it webcast demo. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to put a comment in here. We're going to say webcast. I put a / in front of that. So we're going to save that. We're going to see, I'm going to show you what that does in a second. Another one in our discovery, we've got unknown switches. Anytime we see a switch port that has multiple devices connected to it, but we can't detect an SNMP managed switch on there, we're going to put it's going to put an unknown switch in. What that does is that says, hey, there's something, there's a wireless access point, there's an unmanaged switch, there's something out there that is connected that has multiple devices connected to it, but we don't have the right SNMP community string. We don't have the right information in there for that. So it will help us identify that. I could come in, start looking at that switch. I could say what's connected to it, and it tells me it's connected to port E6 of the PoE switch. It's got these devices connected to it. So I could go trace down what's connected to E6 and find out, is it an unmanaged switch? What's going on with that device out there? So very nice feature in there. We can also sort. So I can say, you know, I want to sort by SSID. I could sort by problems. So do we have any devices with problems? Yeah, I guess we do. I'm a little surprised. I thought my network was better than that. But if we came in and looked at this, it said detected device reboot in the last 5 days. So this will go in, automatically look for problems, things like FCS errors on interfaces of our switches, things like that. So it's going to help us identify where we might have problems out there on our network. All right. So now let's switch over here. We're going to jump into Wi-Fi. There is so much to cover in here. You know, I want to try and keep this to an hour. So we're just going to keep bouncing through here. So when we go into Wi-Fi, it brings up our channel map. So we start getting an idea of our wired, our 802.11 versus non-802.11, our retries. So if I see that I've got high utilization, if I don't see a lot of retries, probably means that I don't have a lot of interference out there. I don't have things stepping on top of me. I don't have adjacent channel overlap issues, things like that. And it starts giving me a picture of how many APs do I have? How many clients do I have out there, or APs and clients I've got out there on my network? I can go to my channel overlap. And I was just, I took this to a coffee shop. I was sitting there just taking a look overall. I'm not capturing any traffic or anything like that. What was interesting is I got a really good picture of a case where somebody was running a 40 megahertz wide AP in 2.4. So you got this big, ugly hump right there in the middle. But in this case, beautiful. We've got people on 1, 6, and 11. So we can see that we don't have any adjacent channel overlap going on in there. I can come over here. I can get an idea of, for 36 to 64, what am I looking at for my overlap there? My overlap for 100 to 140, or for that channel range, what do we have going on in that area? I can go back to utilization. So now let's say that we've got high utilization on one of our channels. So I grab channel 1 right here. Channel details appears down below. I can click on channel details, and it's going to start showing me what's going on with channel 1. It tells me the frequency range, etc. It says we have a couple problems. So it says retries exceed 0%. So that's a pretty low threshold. This is where I could go in. I could change my problem thresholds. I may want to change that. And it says channel 1 utilization exceeds 0%. This is probably a case where I was trying to get problems to show up, and I set the thresholds really low. But we can design thresholds that are representative of what we expect out of our network, be able to go in and set those. Now it shows me for channel 1, what SSIDs do I have out there? And I can sort by signal strength, just like we did before. I could go in and set a filter, which one of our filters right now is on channel 1. I could say, you know what, I want to see my signal to noise ratio. I could, take a look and see out of service. That one looks pretty bad. We could reverse our sort. We could see which ones are the strongest. I'm going to go in. We're going to throw a filter up here. We're going to remove channel 1. We're going to go to channels. Go to channel 36. We'll go back. That's the channel I'm using. So there's my AP right there. So I could say, you know what? I'm interested in, we've got my signal. We've got our AP count. We could, go in and take a look at client count, et cetera. I'm going to say signal. So we're going to come in. We're going to say, select that one. We could say APs. Show me what APs we have out there. Select an AP. And we could say what SSIDs. And that's kind of a tricky one. I gave that my MAC address because I was trying to fix a problem. We'll do this one. So here we can see what SSIDs are on there, what BSSIDs are on there. So let's go to BSSIDs. Now, here's where we see utilization. So now we're sorting by 802.11 utilization. So let's say we go in and we see that we have a channel that's highly utilized. We can start drilling in and we can find out which BSSIDs have the highest utilization. So I could click on that. And now we can start getting some information. We can see clients. We can see rates and capabilities. We can see RF and traffic statistics. So let's take a quick look at RF and traffic statistics. Now, this is where we can start graphing out information up to 24 hours. So I could start taking a look at what does this look like over time. So it's going to show me my signal, my noise, my SNR. I can come down, I can see channel 802.11 and BSSID 802.11. So this is where I can really start getting an idea of, for this BSSID, how much of that channel is being used by that one particular AP. How much non-802.11 do I have out there? Okay, retry rates. Now we're going to come back and we're going to go to clients. Now I could go in and just like with the let's see. Yeah. Oh, let's see. Kind of drilled down the wrong path there a little bit. But let me go back a little bit more here. Let me choose this one. All right. So now if we come in and take a look at clients, I can see that on this channel, my MacBook is using up 2%. Why? We're doing a webcast. I expect it to use some. So I could come in here and click on my MacBook, tells me what my statistics are, and we could click on that and we could really start drilling down and taking a look at what are the stats for my device. So we are sending the webcast through this wireless connection. We could get an idea of what the health of that wireless connection looks like. So how many streams, what's our channel width, what's our retry rate, etc. So this gives me a way I could go in and start taking a look at what's happening on my wireless side. So just as a very capable, very powerful wired analyzer, we have the ability to come in here and do wireless as well. So let's back out. We're going to back out to the home screen. So now we want to know how things are performing. What kind of throughput are we getting? So we have two different ways of going in and measuring throughput. We've got the performance test and we've got the iPerf test. So we're going to start with the iPerf test. And in this case, what I can do is I can come in here and I can use this in combination with an iPerf 3 server. Now this iPerf 3 server could be a Linux box, a Windows box running iPerf 3, or we could use it in combination with the NetAlly test accessory. Now let me switch over here. We'll dig this out. My little NetAlly test accessory right here. I plug this in. It's PoE powered, and it shows that I've connected up, and it goes out and registers itself with Link Live. So once it's registered with Link Live, I could go out and put that the address of that device in. So in this case, we're going to say that we're going to put in the address of that test accessory, 10.0.11.134. And we are going to run a test. And in this case, I'm going to use TCP. I'll say OK. I'm going to do an upstream and downstream test. And I'm going to say that my upstream threshold is 100 megabits per second. And my downstream threshold is 100 megabits per second. And we're going to go back. We're going to hit start. Okay. So we're going to start running that iPerf test. And one thing that I want to mention is that all of these charts are 24 hours. So if we wanted to run a test over a really long period of time, we could. Now, that test accessory, we see that right here on our TCP up, we're getting about 550 megabits per second going to that test accessory. And in this case, we're our average, well, we got 518 average, 483 average going to that. So here's the neat thing. I can put that test accessory out there and I can do an iPerf test. And the iPerf test doesn't have to be through the wired port. It can be through the wireless port as well. So imagine this. I want to check AP placement. I could hook a test accessory to a switch, connect my access point to it. Then I could walk around with this and do tests and take a look at what that performance look like on there. Okay, I can take that test result and I can upload that test result to Link Live. So now we've gone in, we've done an iPerf test. I could say, I'll say Studio iPerf, and we're going to say webcast. We're going to save that. So now I can save that test result and I can say, where was that test taken? So I can do an iPerf test out there to any iPerf 3 server. Okay, it does not have to be the test accessory. Could be one of my own devices running that. Now, let's come back here. We're going to do a performance test. So in this case, I'm going to come over to my other Etherscope. I'm going to go to performance. And I am running a performance peer. Now, I can use this in combination with a one-touch AT10 gig. I can use it in combination with an Etherscope NXG, and I could also use a LinkRunner G2 as a reflector. We're going to use Appear in this case. So what Appear does is it gives us both the upstream and downstream test results. So in this case, we're connected at 10 gig over here for our performance peer. So we're going to come over to our Etherscope NXG, and we are going to find our other cable here. We're going to plug that in, and that is connected to a 10 gig switch. So I'm going to come up here to auto test, and it automatically started running my auto test when I plugged that in. Okay. So we're going to let that auto test run there. Now that auto test is going to show an error because I don't have PoE on that 10 gig switch. I don't care. It's still going to get an IP address, and that's what I wanted it to do. So we'll let that finish. Okay, showed that one error, but that's all right for this case. Okay, so there's our one error. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to go to performance. Now, for my performance test, I can come in here and set up my peer. I can also go in and I can add services. So in this case, I've added a service that is a 10 gig full duplex test. I've specified the endpoint as my other Etherscope. I've said I want to use a frame size of 1024. I'm going to send 10 gigabits up and 10 gigabits down. This is a 10 gig full duplex test. My threshold, I'm going to say if I lose more than 0.3% packets, test is going to fail. So let's go in and let's run a test here. We're going to hit start. Now I could add multiple services in here as well. So we see over here that on our performance peer, we're at 100% utilization, or 100% link utilization up and down. Over here, we're running our test, and we're going to graph out our frame loss. We're going to show what our stats are now. One of the differences, when we do an iPerf test, we can choose TCP or UDP. When we do the performance test, we're using UDP. We don't care about retransmissions. In this case, we're jamming packets through at the rate specified. So in this example, when we went in and we did this update, we see frames lost up, 0. Frames lost down, 0. Latency. So this shows us what our latency is. So our peak latency was 11.2 microseconds. It gives us an idea of, there's our limit, gives us our latency down. This gives us our jitter up and down. So we can go in and we can create profiles in here, just like we can with the other setups. And we can create a profile that tests very specific parameters for what our network is doing. So if I've gone in and built a 10 gig network, I can use the Etherscope NXG in combination with another Etherscope NXG or a one-touch AT10 gig to test full line rate, full duplex 10 gig and make sure that that's working. Now, because I went in and set those parameters, we come in and we see test is complete, up success, down success. The Link supports 10 gig. So I've got this little $250 Netgear switch that has two 10 gig ports. We could argue all day long whether that is really a good switch or not, but I can tell you this, it does 10 gig full line rate, full duplex with no packet loss. That's what I want. So I'll come in, I'll say upload that to Link Live. I'm going to save that to Link Live. All right, so let's come to our home screen. We're at an hour. We're going to run over. That's there's way too much to talk about here. In this case, Link Live, I can come in and I can enable Link Live, tell it to upload my test results. I can come in here. I can add job comments. I can add do software updates directly from here. So we're going to go into Link Live in just a minute. You're going to see why I kept putting a / in there. A few other things. This is a Android-based device. It's got Bluetooth built into it. So as I mentioned before, I took and I went in and I connected this Bluetooth keyboard to it. So if I come into my auto test, and you can watch the screen over there, and I can say I want to add a comment. Okay, getting carried away here. Let's go back. I can go to auto test. I can go to that, and I want to add a comment to that. So this comment is going to be put in as a label to go along with this. So I'm going to say add a comment. And in the comment, I'm going to say, I could put a jack number in there. So I type that in on my little keyboard, and I'll say save to last test result. So that's going to upload it. Now here's one that I thought was pretty slick. I took and created this spreadsheet that has all my jack numbers on it, and I created a barcode in Excel that went with it. So now, let's say I want to add a comment, and I don't want to have to type it in. All I have to do is come in here, go to my comment field, and scan that, and I connected a Bluetooth barcode scanner to the tester. So now when I scan that, it will scan that value in right there, and I don't have to type it. So being able to have that Bluetooth means that if I want to be able to scan something in, we'll go ahead and say save that to the last test result as well. If I want to scan something in, I can attach a Bluetooth scanner. In fact, let's go one step even further. What we find is that we've got this App Store right here. The App Store has hundreds of applications that have been vetted by NetAlly and uploaded. So we can go in, and there's tools for installing wireless access points. There's Air Magnet Survey Mobile out there. There's all of these different tools, and you can go in, and if there's ones that you want to add, you can request they be added. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type in Epson. Okay. Well, let's see. Now let's just scroll down. So we're going to scroll down here. I'm going to find the Epson printer software. We're going to select iLabel. So what I want to do is I want to put the iLabel software on there. So I'm going to hit download. So I'm going to load that app up. Oh, no, okay. So I could load it, but I already have it. So I'm going to come over, and I'm going to slide over here. Let's do this. I've got it in here. You know what? I must have loaded it on another tool. So let's go back. I go there. We're going to say download again. I loaded it up on one of my LinkRunner G2s. All right, still plenty of time for questions. All right, so we downloaded it. Now we're installing it. So what I found, we're going to open that. There are apps out there. I've got one for a little deal called the Air Console that lets me connect via Bluetooth to a console port. But now I'm going to say new label. Let me turn my printer on. Got my little printer right here. So I'm going to turn the printer on, and I could go in and I could copy. Watch this. We could come in here. We go to our test result, and I could go to Classroom Switch 1, and we could grab Classroom Switch 1. Let me do that on the touch screen here. I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to come out to my printer. And I'm going to tap and paste. Okay, so I grab that off of that screen. I'm going to say dash. Then I'm going to come back to my test result. And I grab the port number. See if I can get that. We'll say copy. Come back here. I'm going to say paste. Okay, so I copied and pasted out of that Autotest test result. I put it into the label software. Now I'll hit done. And we're going to say that all looks good. There we go. Printer connected. So watch this. There we go. So it popped out a label. And that label says Classroom Switch 1 G2. Little battery powered printer. So now I could take and print labels out for cables, for labeling racks, things like that, using this particular tool based on information that I've collected. So lots of tools, lots of features. We've got the browser capabilities, etc. So a few times now I've mentioned Link Live. So let me grab Link Live and we will come over here. Yeah. We're going to bring Link Live over. So here we've got Link Live. So I have been uploading information to Link Live as we've been going along. And in fact, let's see, I think I need to go to my test lab organization here. And if we go to our test results, every time I've run an auto test, what we see is it's giving us information about that. And where we've gone in and saved information. Remember I added those labels in there? Let's zoom in. Right there, it put it in the folder called webcast. Every single time I put a / in there, it saved it to a folder, so now it's organized all those test results together. I put this label in, I put that label in. I could come in and type in a label. But the neat thing with the labels is I can now search on those labels. So if I said, hey, I want to find all the jacks that start with 20-0, it's going to show me all the jacks that have those IDs in there. I could say IDF1. So I could go in and start collecting that information. And for each one of these, it's now giving me info as far as the Etherscope, the voltage. All of this information is being collected every time I ran one of those tests. We could come in here and we could say, here's our webcast demo. So this is where we did our discovery. So if I say view analysis, this is all of my discovery information out there that I discovered. It's been uploaded to Link Live. So I could have somebody out in the field using the Etherscope to collect this information. They could upload it. I could be sitting right here in my office and I could say, hey, you know what? I want to generate a report. I want to generate a PDF report in there on that discovery information. Or I want to generate a CSV file. And so now I get that data out. So it makes it really easy to get that data out of the Etherscope into Link Live and onto my machine. So if I go back, okay, I could say there's the path to Uta's office. So I could go in and take a look at that. We could take a look at, you know, here's our Wi-Fi PDF. We've got all of this information that we've collected out there, all of our test results. And I could go in and say, hey, I want to go to the webcast folder and it shows me just those results in that folder. So now when I go in and generate my report, it's showing me just the information in there. Now we could go in, I could attach a picture. So let's do that real quick, just so you can see what that looks like. Let's say we have an access point or something that's in an oddball location, hard to find. So I could come out and I could go to my camera. And we could say we want to take a picture. I don't know, we'll take a picture of that right there. Okay, so I took the picture. So now I can come out to that picture. I can say I want to share that picture. And it says, where do I want to share it? I want to share it to Link Live. So I could go out and I could say, either save the picture by itself or save it to the last test result. Let's go out and do that. All right. So if we come in there, there's our test result. Oh, and there's our picture right there. So that picture has now been saved. I didn't want to download it. But that picture has now been saved out there. And we could go in, and I did download it, and we got that picture. So we could download that picture. So we can attach pictures. We can attach comments. There's the picture that I took. So we pulled that in there. So we can now start collecting that information and go in and save that with these test results. And as I mentioned, we could also do a screenshot of something like a cable test. All right. So we're well over the hour. So we're going to start wrapping things up here. I want to make sure if you do have questions, I want to make sure I get those questions answered. What we find is highly portable device. Everything we've done, we can create profiles. Those profiles can be used over and over again. So it makes it really nice for being able to go in, do testing. I have all my wireless and wired tools built into one place. And what we find is that as I start loading these apps up on here, I could take that Epson app, I'll click and hold on it, and I could put that over here on this page. So now I can start creating workflows. I could put problem ticketing, I could put configuration tools. So now as I swipe back and forth, I've got my home screen right there, and I've got two screens on each side of it. So now I can start organizing this information together so that I go to this screen to work on problem tickets. I go to this screen to work on wireless. But most importantly, I have a tool that allows me to go out, discover my network, test for resources using Autotest, and be able to do performance testing both on wired and wireless networks to make sure that that network is performing exactly the way it's supposed to perform. This is what we start getting out of the Etherscope NXG. One of the things I'm really excited about is it is a platform. And as we start, as time goes by, it's just a matter of them adding more apps into this to give us even more capabilities. And because we can go out and, like in this case, if I go out to Link Live and I come up here and I go to software update, if you have Ally Care support along with your Etherscope NXG, we can come out here, we can see, are there any updates? So all I have to do is download the updates, and now I've got the latest and greatest. So I don't know, let's see. Let me switch back. I'm going to stop sharing here. Vincent, do you have anything that you want to add in there? All right, he says, no, not at this time. So cool. So I want to thank you for joining me on the webcast. I plan on doing more of these. This is a phenomenal tool, and I've been very excited to talk about it. So now I've had the chance. What I'm going to do is I've been recording. I'm going to take this, go through, make sure everything looks and sounds the way I want it to, and I'll get this posted up on YouTube and send everyone a link of where you can find that. So thanks for joining me. If you have any questions, it is mike@nps-llc.com. Shoot me an email. I'll do my best to get an answer to you. So thanks for joining me, and we'll see you in a future webcast.